Hello and welcome to you all to this amazing panel that we're about to have on changemaking through art. We are asking questions about how art has driven change in our societies, how we can use art and engage in art in a way that can impact our futures positively, and and how we can get involved in big and small ways to make change in the world. My name is Hussein Jan Muhammad, and I live in Port Moody, British Columbia. I am grateful to be on the traditional ancestral territory, unceded territory of the Coquitlam peoples in British Columbia. I'm very excited to share with you a concept called two-eyed seeing, by Albert Marshall from the Mi'kmaq Nation, who talks about how growing up in Canada as an Indigenous person, it was important to build a capacity to see with one eye into one's own culture and see with one eye and multiple eyes into cultures outside of our own culture. Albert Marshall suggests that two-eyed seeing is a capacity to see the strengths in diverse cultures, including one's own, and combining those strengths to create systems and knowledge and ways of being that can benefit the whole. As an Ismaili, I'm reminded of our teachings on pluralism and the ethic of pluralism, which also acknowledges that we build knowledge and take knowledge and work with others to combine knowledge to make the world a better place. Today, we are privileged to have four outstanding human beings and artists across Canada who are working in their unique ways to make change in the world. We start with Farah Mita, who's based in Los Angeles. Farah is a singer, musician, and change maker who is excited about creating, lighting the way for others through music to become fireflies, to become animated expressions of wonderful beingness in the world. I also would like to introduce you to Alia Nur Mohammed, who's a designer. She is a senior designer with an architectural firm in Vancouver. And Alia has been involved with interior design, with concept development and design. And she has worked a lot with her family's architectural design firm to work on Jamaat Khanas and other projects around the world. We have with us Shuhaib Zahuruddin from Montreal, who is a musician, a polymath, a thinker, a writer, a designer, and he has a wonderful platform called Zahir X Batin, which is a multi-dimensional platform to bring together ideas, ways of being, and philosophies to bring positivity into the world. And we also have Akil Virani, who's based currently in Toronto, who is a visual artist. He's also been an artist who's worked in films, with film, and he crosses the line or walks the line between activism and art through his projects. So without further ado, I would love to turn this moderated panel to you all to share with us some of your ideas about change, about social change, and how you see art playing a role in making an impact in the world. So let's start with Farah. Farah, you're there in Los Angeles. Can you tell us a little bit about a project that you've worked on that has been impactful for you? If you have any stories about that project, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi everyone, my name is Farah Mita. Born and raised in Ottawa, Canada, shout out. But yes, currently based in Los Angeles on the unceded territory of the Chumash, Tongva, and Kiz nations. And it's a beautiful place to be here. And it's very rich in art and culture. So I feel very, very privileged to be in this energy where I have been. That being said, there have been, especially in the last year and a half, there have been moments of unrest, of rioting and protests and injustice. And, coming from Canada, for me, it was definitely a huge shock to see the kind of systemic racism, individual racism, and the way kind of society works here. It's been a bit jarring, particularly during the protests around George Floyd. There was an energy here in LA. I mean, there was quarantine on top of curfew and all sorts of things going on. And I was left feeling so angry. And if you know me, I am not an angry person. I'm pretty peaceful and hyper and happy and full of spreading love. But in that month of June 2020, I think I was harboring so much anger. And then I was asked to do a performance, an outdoor performance, and I couldn't think of any way to do anything other than speaking to the issues at hand that were going on. And so I told the promoter, I'm like, I will perform, but only if I can sing the songs of Black artists and also share the stories of people that have been killed or murdered or brutalized through this whole police brutality, systemic racism that's happened, and that we raise money for something to help that community. So luckily he agreed, and we put on this performance, just a nice acoustic 3-piece performance. And in between each song, I shared the stories of George Floyd, of Ahmaud Arbery, of Breonna Taylor, about maybe 10, 12, 15 stories. We raised some money for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and it finally felt like I wasn't just sitting idle. It felt like I was doing something to contribute. And so for me personally, it kind of helped to ease my anger slowly. It wasn't quite enough. So what I ended up doing was creating a series. So I did one song and one story and one quote by a prominent Black individual, and turned it into a series on my Instagram. And, the idea was to use music, the songs that we all love by artists that we all know and love, and turn it into something that could bring awareness and education. Because especially in our community, there hasn't been a deep acknowledgement around, racial justice in this kind of arena in terms of what happened. So I really wanted to educate and bring awareness and have, people that then felt called to it become allies. Because when one marginalized community is targeted, I feel like it's our responsibility to join in and be a part of that movement. So that's probably the one project in the recent past that I have felt not only helped my mental health, and getting through that, but also using art and what I could do, my voice, through, the speaking and the music to bring about some change.
Hi everyone, so my name is Shoaib. I'm from Montreal and the Mohawk territory, and originally I'm from Afghanistan, Bamiyan, Afghanistan, and I arrived in Montreal when I was 9, and I grew up in a space, cosmic space, with a lot of people from a different culture, especially in the urban culture of people, and it built my identity as a person, and it impacted the way I see the world. And I started this art platform, which use art as a medium to change the world little by little. And I used to be a BUI teacher, a Beit Willem teacher, and post 9/11, Muslims, and Ismaili included, would be discriminated or be bullied for what happened on the day of 9/11. So and it built stereotypes and wrong narrative about who we are as Muslims, and I wanted to do something about it, and so I took the pedagogy of how media works and switched the content of what's seen in the media to project the positive or nice things that we have within Islam. And I got a chance to shoot a music video with my brother Fida, who's a rapper, and we shooted the video at the McGill Islamic Library to talk about the values that we have within the Islamic framework, and us, our identity, like religious identity, even Canadian identity, we're like hybrids. We're this mix of so many culture that we take the best from both world, from my Afghan culture, my Islamic Ismaili culture, and Canadian values, and put them all together and come up with one identity. So yeah, the world is changing, and we're adapting ourselves to the time that we're living in. And I remember this. I think it was. I don't know if it was a speech or a Farman by Muhammad Sultan Muhammad Shah. He was talking about the Prophet saying to be Ibn al-Waqt, to be the children of your time, and and it was really to keep the values that I have as a Muslim, but then at the same time being here and now, and living my Canadian identity without being in contradiction. So taking the best of both worlds to express myself and also help others to express themselves through art. So yeah, and the idea of Zahir and Batin comes from Nasser Khosrow, who's a Ismaili philosopher, but also a Muslim philosopher from the Islamic world. And I was inspired by those two concepts because it represents the idea of balance and being uh, present here, and at the same time not forget that we're going back to the real home, the spiritual home that we have with Khudavan and Allah.
Hi, everyone. Aliana Mohammed, and I'm speaking with you from West Vancouver, BC, which is the unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, in particular the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam First Nations. For me, art has always been a big part of my life. And it's almost like a form of, when I paint, it's a form of meditation almost. And so I always think about art as a form of healing. And in all of its different forms, art, whether it be music or architecture or just sculpture, paint, whatever it may be that fires up people's inner being, and their connection, I think, to God. But I think one thing for me that's always been important is in the work that I do in terms of when architecture, interior design, really thinking about how the spaces that we create as designers have an impact on people, how they use the space and what they feel within that space. But not just that, what is the social impact of the architecture that's being created? How does it affect the outside community? How does it involve people around? How does it make their lives better? And Hazrat Imam talks about this a lot, about architecture being a catalyst for social change. So that's something that's been first and foremost in my mind always when I think about creating a space or anything that I do. It's always on my mind. How does this make what its surroundings are better? What, the people, the community, everything that architecture touches.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone. So excited to hear a little bit about your stories there and to chat with you. My name is Akil Virani or Akil Virani or Akil Virani, depending on which language you prefer. I live and work on the traditional territory of many nations in Toronto, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And Toronto is now home to various diverse First Nations people, populations, Inuit and Métis peoples as well. The specific location where I live is governed by the Toronto Purchase Treaty. It's number 13. It was signed in 1805 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit. It was later disputed in 1998 and later settled in 2010. And so I am a treaty person living here as a settler. I actually grew up in BC, went to Fraser Valley, Jamatkana, shout out to Fraser Valley. And my work is a visual art generally, as well as a little bit of filmmaking. I think a lot about how art can fit into systems of change, how the work we do can fit into structures and movements of change. And a specific project that comes to mind, I did some work while I was living in Copenhagen. I did some work with an organization that works with refugees for their rights. And so when I spent some time with the community at the community center there after several weeks, they asked me if I could help create sandwich boards and posters for a petition campaign they were doing, where they were petitioning. Their goal was 50,000 signatures among the Danish population for the rights of asylum seeking and refugee children. It's a project I think of often because we often do, as artists, really great work without necessarily seeing the results, because a lot of the work is intangible, it's interpersonal. And that's a project where I can point to years later and say, I did something that I know in my heart was good and helpful, but I can also see how it fit into a larger picture. And that for me is important. As the years go by, as I do more and more work, I want to see, a tangible impact.
Wow, thanks, Akil. I'm reminded, and one of the threads that I see that's coming through is the relationship that you personally have to your own artwork and your own creative impetus and your perception and relationship you have with the larger environments in which you live, whether it was in 2020, Farah, when you started to feel those emotions, that anger and seeking a way to bring some kind of response to that. Alia, you've talked about the built environment as catalyst for change, and then how those environments influence and shape us and how we are shaped by them and what responsibilities we have to that. Shuhab, you've spoken about how you were impacted growing up, coming to Canada in an environment you lived in, and started to be inspired about how to respond to that. Akil as well. Can you say more about how those things work together? How does your personal relationship to the art, your response to the environment, how does that work together with then what you do to produce your art? And we can open it up to anyone who would like to offer a thought.
So for me, It all started when I was very young, and you know, loved to sing and write, and just generally to vent emotions, and you know, self-healing, self-soothing. But you know, the role models that I personally had that influenced, you know, how I wanted to do art were obviously Hazar Imam and all the beautiful spiritual messages. Like, even aside from the religion, there's so much you can take out of the Firmans and out of his speeches that are, it's just non-denominational, like great advice for all, you know, from Sultan Muhammad Shah's Firmans and Hazar Imam's Firmans, like, and speeches. Like, there's just so much information there that I felt it's too bad that not everybody has access to this. Like, I wish everybody could have access to this in a way that resonated with them, you know. And then seeing Michael Jackson and how he used his platform for writing songs like Heal the World and Man in the Mirror and Earth Song. And you know, there's this cool rock star that's making these songs. Now I feel like the purpose in life is to use your talents and abilities for the betterment of humanity. So that's kind of how this started. And for me, when I decided to change paths from med school to music, it was always with the intention of having a message, having a brand, having a like creating that platform to kind of send those spiritual messages in a pop culture mainstream kind of way. And so that's how I was struggling for a long time as to how to do that, because really the most popular songs that blow up are, you know, things that talk about things that were not necessarily part of my value system. And so how to be successful in a world that is sort of against you, you know what I mean? Which led to me creating Firefly World. And so kind of creating my own world and my own platform where I can, you know, do the interviews and interview people, bringing to light certain things that not everybody, like not all my supporters or fans would get to see, or information that they would necessarily get. Or I can write it in a song with a cool, you know, pop R&B kind of beat, and put those, you know, sneak those messages in there. And so that's kind of how it happens for me. That's kind of the development that happened for me. And really, I think creativity is so heavily intrinsically linked to your spirituality that it doesn't really stop at somebody who has a definitive artistic talent. Like, you can be creative in your cooking, you can be creative in your problem solving, and whatever aspect of life you have. But when you are kind of getting out of your own way, you're shutting off the barriers, and you're allowing the creator to speak through you.
Yeah, Alia, it just reminds me of what you were saying about your spirituality and your art making, and then your deliberate and conscious thinking about, okay, what are these questions we need to ask to make these built environments that can actually be present and inspire change. Can you say more about how those things come together for you?
Well, I think when we try to think of a space, we try to create spaces that are that not only express the human's sort of connection with nature, but also it's to sort of enhance that relationship. So whether it be by the use of materials that we use, the use of glass, and being able to be one with the space outside. But not just that. I think that one thing that's very important is that I'll give you an example of a project where we had worked on the Khan Academy in Mombasa, and we extracted a lot of coral from the site, and there was just tons of it that came out, and we decided that this would be the perfect material to use as our the exterior of the building. So instead of all of that material getting thrown or dumped or crushed and put somewhere else, it came from the site, and it stayed on the site, and the building had its own very own connection to to its exact ground where it came from. So, the building itself feels very comfortable, in its surroundings. And when a person goes there, they actually feel that vibe, because it's not an alien material. It is part of its surroundings, and the person also becomes part of that, right? So there's different layers to it, and of course, the creation of the blocks from that material created jobs, for people because they had to then sort of make them into to clean blocks for cladding the building. So it had a direct impact on the surrounding people, the society that this building was sitting in. And that's just one example, right? We have there's many examples of these projects, but I think that's one thing where we can just think about, how do we as people who create, how can we whatever we are creating, how can that be just a simple thing can ground our creation so simply and have it connect with God and with nature and with the human being in such a simple way, but it has such a big impact, right?
That relationship of the inner and outer self and other one's own space, other people's space, is really an interesting aspects and elements of thinking about social change making, right? And bringing into the world spaces, sounds, images, ways of being, attitudes that can actually foster a greater sense of well-being in the world. And you were talking about healing as well earlier. So I think this is really, these are interesting qualities, especially because sometimes I as a choir director and a composer of particular kinds of music, I'm always asking, how do I fit into social justice? And then what's my definition? And then it's so easy to take on, if I'm not woke in this way, or if I'm not speaking this kind of language, or if I'm not addressing that kind of issue, then I'm not contributing socially to the world. And that causes distress, right? Because now it's not just good enough for me to sing in a choir. I have to do something with it. And Akhil, you were speaking to me earlier about a kaleidoscopic kind of sense of social change and art, and your experience of bringing these elements together. Could you speak to us more about that?
So the kaleidoscope of what we mean by that, what I mean by that, is that there are so many different ways or angles to go about affecting social change. And so you can see just in the panel, right, there are so many different projects, different mediums, different strategies that all have their place in contributing, right? We're trying to push the needle. I love this reference to Michael Jackson. I'm going to sing for you for 10 seconds. We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones who make a brighter day. So let's start giving. I'm not a singer. I'm a visual artist, but you got it, right?
You are now. You are now.
There we go. We can't help but respond to the world around us. We are the world, right? We are the children. And so, yeah, this inside and outside is really interesting, because all of us, we don't live in a vacuum. We live in a society, right? And so one thing I think about is how amazing is it that we're in a position that we can help, right? That's privilege. The word scares some people. Privilege meaning, right, we benefit from things that put us in a position to be able to help. Right. We're in a position where we can follow through on our spiritual and political alignments. I feel very grateful for that. And so to bring it back to the kaleidoscope, wherever you find yourself, you are in a position to help, right? Whether you're an artist or not, we just got to find our personal way and our personal journey of helping and contributing to social change. Shoaib, anything to add?
Yeah, so I think what Akil is saying, like, especially like when you grow up and you're trying to find yourself, especially starting, let's say, from 12 years old all the way to, we always seek ourselves, trying to understand who we are, but uh, to live with a diversity of people and at the same time trying to find who you are. It's confusing, but at the same time, it's eye-opening because you have the ability to look at things in so many ways and to meet people from different culture with different points of view, either religion or cultural identity. Uh, you learn that actually we're all this one kaleidoscope all together, from with different colors, with gray zones and 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 the fusion of those culture rebuilt. I was talking about that hybrid culture. Like, I don't consider myself just as an Afghan. I consider myself as a Canadian. At the same time, I'm Ismaili. At the same time, I'm part of the human community, and it's amazing to know that you're like everyone and you at the same time, and and to juxtapose those two identity of wholeness and just you being together as an individual, it only grows you from the inside and at the same time from the outside, while you're uh, uh, talking and being with other people. And I think Zahir and Batin is an art platform, but the philosophy behind comes from Nasser Khusraw books. And he talks about the duality of the world of the Zahir and world of Batin, and it reflects in everything that we do. So yeah.
Wow, I love that. You know, I'm often caught in situations where we hear about religiosity and social justice as opposing. And what you're all saying and what I'm like feeling is that there's a inherent spiritual, ethical responsibility to us, on us as human beings, to help and to ask those questions. How is this particular form of being in the world and way of doing and imagining the world connecting with myself, and that spirituality that connects me empathetically to all of us, to all relations? And then what responsibilities do I have, and how can I use this knowledge to bring some benefit to the world in which I live? I wanted to, you know, we don't have too much more time, but I wanted to ask each of you to share how you think the community as an Ismaili community and our larger arts communities and in our societies can foster this kind of a value system in teaching of art or bringing communities together. We'll start with Shoaib.
Mashallah, we're a big community, and what we do when we start within the own Ismaili community, it impacts all the other communities as well. But to start giving all the artists, no matter what's their medium of expression, uh, a space for them to be presented, recognized, and all the diversity of art, it's already a good start. I know post-COVID it's more difficult, but I mean, we can start back when everything gets back to normal. So to call local artists within the community to come for events and support them, encourage them. Let's say artists from the Jamaat Kana to come and then present their art and then encourage them and it goes a long way. Just for them to be called, okay, there's this event, we would love to for you to bring your art or come perform. It goes a long way.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shoaib. Farah, you had been speaking earlier about platforms as well. Could you add to?
Yeah, I think, as I look, as I remember my childhood and going to different camps like Aluma and Marifa, and then having the opportunity to sing in choirs with Kani and, Hussein, you had your choir. And, I was mentioning back when you did Yakzan, that was kind of it was like a one big artist event to showcase Ismaili. You were doing the actors and the dancers at the time and the choir, and it was like one big event every few years. And where we've come to with having something as massive as the Jubilee Arts Festival in Lisbon was, I thought, we've come a really long way in providing platforms. Even here in LA, they have music nights every weekend, or at least they did during the pandemic. And, I wasn't here too much longer before that, but I think these little platforms are popping up. So we definitely need to continue that, because all these budding artists or creatives, like there's so many camps and platforms for the scientists and the mathematicians and the athletes and all that. So all these budding creatives, just even for them to know if it's something that they want to continue in, to give them a little chai session in Kane and little coffee houses or chances in Beit Olom. I think to continue that and make it more normal is great. But also I think what we need to focus more on is art as a career. So funny that Alia is here, because I would really look up to her being an artist and making that her career, and her being supported and encouraged in that genre. And to hear like what you've been doing, Alia, is so amazing, and how you've been able to use your artistic talents and passions in in giving back to the community, but also, the world, like everything else outside of our community. And so you're definitely someone I've really looked up to. Same with you, Hussein, like, using your talents and passions and your creativity, and like you're really a legend in our community for having done that and taking it outside of our community and then continuing your passion. So continuing to have role models of people that do it within our community, but also outside of our community, and people like highlighting people that are able to make a living off of it and how they are using their art and redefining what success looks like. I think that's maybe even a bigger conversation of where to take this, where we don't need to be making a certain amount of money. We don't need to be basing success on certain accolades. It's great to highlight those things. It's great to have those achievements, but really defining success on how happy you are. And I think if we start to have that conversation, you'll see more artists coming out, more creatives coming out, because if your parents are all of a sudden like, I need you to do what makes you the happiest, that, you can pay your rent with and have a family with and do all the other things that are important to you with, if that's something you want. And just that conversation about redefining what success looks like towards being happy and fulfilled spiritually, then I think that'll also help to foster the growing creative energy that I think we're starting to see in the future generations, and even in people that have been wanting to do it their whole life, but kind of put it aside because of other responsibilities or thinking that they shouldn't or can't.
Wow, that's an important aspect that you bring up, right? Is that fulfillment, Hazrat Imam's used the word enlightened self-fulfillment, and I connect that back to like the spiritual fulfillment, the internal well-being, and contribution to society. We'll go to Akil next, and Alia, and then we'll wrap up the session today.
Thank you, Hussein. I love everything. I agree with everyone. I want to give you all a big hug. Two things that for me, the question, like, how can our community or communities foster this value system, right? Action is a simple answer to that, right? So you have values, you have intentions, you have the things you want to see, and when you're in a position to act, you do that, right? So that's action. We are acting. the people in the panel are acting, you listening are acting, but we can always do more. We can always act more in alignment with our values to bring about the change we want to see. We have so much power in our lives. We're in positions to help and to change things. So realizing our power can lead us to feel empowered, right? Confident to, take more action towards building the world that we want to see. And the last thing I have to say, we all grow up with a slight pressure, maybe to not be an artist. You can be an artist. There are ways to live as an artist, whether it's full-time, whether it's part-time art, whether you have a side job. We love all of our artists in all shapes and forms. And so for you listening, let's not discount the value that artists bring to our society. Alia.
Touching on what you said and what Farah said, I think that definitely the community support is necessary. I think we've come a long way with Jubilee Arts. That was huge. It was like leaps and bounds, so I think that we're on our way. But I definitely think that we need to be doing more. And the younger generations need to feel safe in wanting to be a creative person and expressing themselves creatively, being able to share their spirituality through their creation, and really being able to communicate with others and other creative people as they grow as artists. And I think that has to start within our community, because they will look outside of the community to find those connections. And as they grow, they become assets within our community, and we need to be able to harness that and to hang on to those assets. If we can use art as a way to heal. We've had a lot go on in the last couple of years in the world, and mental health has become something at the forefront. How people are handling, the situation and the times that we are in right now, and how they're reacting to being sort of in solitude with the pandemic, with all of the the hate crimes and racism and things that are being brought to light because we are in the situation that we're in. And I think that using art as a healer, even at just a very basic level within our community, whether it be through music, painting, any of these types of forms of art that we can share with one another.
Thank you so much to all of you. This is a wonderful way to wrap it up. That connection, feeling, sensing the environment, whether it's a Surah Nur in the background, whether it's a riots in your city, just being able to be centered and taking it in, listening and feeling, and with that empathy, allow your creativity to come alive. And that is a beautiful gift and a wonderful way for us to think about how we can take those values that are so much part of not only who we are as Ismailis or from our own indigenous backgrounds and lands that we've come from, but also as Canadians. And I want to thank you all today, Alia, Farah, Akil, and Shohib, for spending this time with us and sharing your stories. And hopefully we can reach out to you via your social media platforms. And we look forward to seeing all the change that will come through you and many more in our community. Thank you very much.